With Black Panther being out and being just incredible, I can't help but think about what's coming up next for Marvel. With an Ant-Man sequel coming up that I'm actually kind of excited for, Captain Marvel being set to debut on screen in just over a year, and, Infinity War coming, it seems like there's a lot on their slate right now. Today I want to talk about Infinity War, as you probably guessed by the title. Being directed by Anthony and Joe Russo, the same directors who brought us Captain America: The Winter Soldier, Infinity War is going to be the ultimate culmination of everything that Marvel has been working on since they released the first Iron Man film all the way back in 2008. It will bring together nearly every character that has been introduced in the 18 films over the past 10 years, and is probably one of the most anticipated releases of this year. So when can I stop pretending that I'm excited for it? Don't get me wrong, I am very excited for some of the interactions between characters in this film. It's the first time Peter Quill and the Guardians of the Galaxy will be on Earth since he left, and if we're going off of the trailers, they'll be led there by Thor, fresh off the heels of Ragnarok and sporting a rather fetching eye patch. Aside from me not liking Benedict Cumberbatch as an actor, seeing Doctor Strange fight alongside Iron Man and the other Avengers could lead to some potentially cool action sequences. And, if rumors are to be believed, we'll be getting Thanos' Black Order in the film, which are basically the Four Horsemen if they only served Thanos. All of these elements alone have me sold for the film, but that's just a few select things I'd like to see, and honestly I can probably get some of those from posters or gift sets or whatever off of Tumblr. Nothing about this film has really gotten me to say, okay, I have to go see this in theaters. But the films Thor Ragnarok, Spider-Man Homecoming, and Black Panther did. If anything, this is just a film I'm ready to be over and done with. Like I said, Infinity War, and presumably the Untitled Avengers film slated for 2019, will be the culmination of the last 18 movies. That's 18 different plots and storylines that are supposed to be wrapped up by the time these two films are done. Maybe with a few things leading on into the next stuff, but that's 18 fucking films! We know we're going to get Guardians of the Galaxy and Spider-Man sequels, and depending on how Captain Marvel and Ant-Man 2 do, probably get some more of those. We'll likely be getting more of what we already have, and we have other projects we don't even know about officially yet, including the long-rumored and much-desired Black Widow solo film. Plus, there's Black Panther, the reinvigoration with Thor. There's just so much on the horizon that whatever happens in Infinity War, it's not going to be all that earth-shattering. Unless they finally kill someone off for good. Now that's kind of the big rumor that's been going around, but don't get me wrong, we've had plenty of deaths in the MCU up to this point. Nearly every villain that wasn't Loki has pretty much been killed, but Nick Fury, Tony Stark, and Groot have all had moments where they seemingly died in their film, only to come back pretty much in the same film. This isn't a new complaint for the MCU, as that exact thing has been levied on the franchise since the first fake-out death with Tony Stark in the first Avengers. The only characters we've had that have died and stayed dead up to this point have been villains. And even then, some of them have come back in subsequent films only to die again. Because plot advancement? The only real death we've had of a major character up to this point that's actually meant something is honestly Yondu during the events of Guardians of the Galaxy 2. And that really only impacts the Guardians themselves. More specifically, Peter Quill. Some of you out there might argue Quicksilver was such a death, but when you're basically introduced in a film, have no time to develop a character, and after your death, you're barely even mentioned again, it's not really that impactful. I honestly kind of forgot about him because I mostly forgot about Age of Ultron, so what does that tell you? If they want Infinity War to have a real impact, if they want it to really mean something, they're going to have to kill off some major characters. And it's not like we have any shortage of those to choose from. But that begs the question, the one that everyone has been asking for the last couple months now. Who's getting the axe? If I had to bet that anyone would die, I think at least Tony Stark is going to be one of them. Simply put, he's the man who basically started all of this, and he's the one of the 3 people I mentioned before who have had a death fake-out scene, conveniently having been in a previous Avengers film. I feel the best way that they could do this is with Tony sacrificing himself while fighting Thanos, who has shown in the trailer to have at least 2 of the Infinity Stones, and therefore wields some pretty immense power. There is the quote along the lines of he hopes people will remember him, so that's kind of leading me to believe that, he's going to be the one to die, but that doesn't necessarily mean that line goes towards Tony. Marvel has done this thing where they'll change the way a trailer looks, whether it's the line, the CG, something like that, to make you believe one thing when something else entirely different happens. We could possibly also see the death of recent character Vision, who in the trailer is shown having the Infinity Stone that gave him life being ripped from his forehead. Loki could die, as he failed to bring the Tesseract to Thanos initially, and despite him bringing it to him now, as is implied in the trailers, Thanos could still deem this as a betrayal and kill him anyway. And what about Captain America? One of the other major frontrunners for getting the proverbial axe. Chris Evans has hinted recently that these next 2 films will be his last for the franchise, so it would make sense for them to kill him off if they're going to stop having him around. Whoever ends up getting the axe, it will undoubtedly have to make sense from a narrative standpoint, and not just be a death for the sake of death. If they just started to kill people left and right, it'd leave a bad impression to viewers who have invested years of their lives, a decade to this point, and hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars into this franchise. But death of a major character aside, there is still one major problem that is going to honestly be the film's biggest hindrance: Thanos himself. Ever since the first Avengers film, we've been teased that Thanos is going to be a big deal. He showed up at the end of both Avengers films to basically say he's coming to kill you, and sat in a chair and threatened the most boring villain in the MCU to date. Now, I know that Thanos is a pretty big deal, but I've read the comics, and I've seen him utterly destroy the heroes of Marvel time and time again. But what we've gotten of Thanos in the MCU makes me think he's more along the lines of Kingpin than one of the greatest threats known to the Marvel Universe. He just sits there, lets others do the work for him, and only when he absolutely has to does he come in and fight. Thanos in the comics is terrifying. His entire quest for power is basically done for shits and giggles, just so he can prove to himself that he's the best that there is. Much of what he does is to try and woo a literal personification of death, who ends up going with Deadpool because, Deadpool. He's fought and beaten the Avengers, the Guardians of the Galaxy, Wolverine, Ego the Living Planet, and Thanos. I didn't misspeak there. Thanos fought Thanos. Or more accurately, a doppelganger created by mages, and the doppelganger was supposed to be stronger than him. It's the comics, we're not getting into that. What about Thanos in the films? He stared Ronan down pretty hard, and he has a golden glove. It's shiny. See the problem here? They have been building up to this conflict. 18 films, 10 years, billions of dollars, but not really building up Thanos. No one has died on the road to this showdown, and Thanos hasn't been presented as a villain really worth all he's supposed to be. This version of Thanos doesn't elicit fear. Thanos does not seem like a villain worth worrying about. Marvel can fill the trailers with a bunch of angst and, dread and all that other stuff, but at the end of the film, or films if we're counting the one coming out in 2019, he'll likely be defeated, more likely in a gimmicky sort of way as it happens in the comics, and we'll just move on to newer films with new heroes and new villains for them to combat that'll most likely die in those films. Now, I have heard that the first film of these two will focus heavily on Thanos as a character, giving us a lot of context as to who he is and what his motivations are. Supposedly, we'll be spending a good portion of the film's runtime with Thanos, while the parts with Earth's mightiest heroes are more happening in the background as Thanos begins to bring his plan into action and we learn more about him. I'm okay with that as a concept, but it has to be done well. But out of all this, I think the thing I'm more worried about is how they're going to defeat him. Undoubtedly, it'll have to be a cop-out move, like I said. Like maybe they'll have 3 of their more prolific heroes take him down in the end, one of them stealing the gauntlet or something, I don't know. Let's just say Tony and the Peter boys do it. Since Tony started this whole thing, Guardians Peter is basically the mascot of that franchise, and Spider-Man is kind of gearing up to be the next Tony Stark in the next phase. Or at least that's how I see it. Plus, we have that one shot in the latest trailer where the 3 of them and Drax are talking about a plan, and Chris Pratt's yelling at Robert Downey Jr. about how the plan is terrible and evidence, whatever. They'll probably be the ones to deal the final blow somehow because they are arguably the figureheads for the 3 different parts of the MCU. The original stuff, the space stuff, and the future. The only one left out of this is Doctor Strange representing the magic side of things, but that's more just because I don't really care about Benedict Cumberbatch and it looks like he's got his own problems to deal with in the trailer. What's wrong with these 3 taking out Thanos at the end is that only one of them has anything to do with Thanos. Peter from the Guardians of the Galaxy has heard the name Thanos on multiple occasions, specifically when dealing with Gamora and Nebula, Thanos' adopted daughters. If anything, they should somehow be the ones to kill him off or send him to another dimension or whatever the fuck they end up doing. Narratively speaking, it would be way more satisfactory for them to come together to take out what brought them apart. And of all the heroes who have something to prove against Thanos, it's these 2. Gamora has spent the last 2 Guardians films vowing revenge against Thanos, and in Guardians 2, we learn that Nebula is resentful to Thanos for ripping her and her sister apart, and for the obvious problems of him ripping out her body parts to make her better. Aside from living on the planet that Thanos is attacking, Tony Stark and Peter Parker don't really have much to offer. None of the other heroes do. I mean, hell, the trailer for the film has Tony Stark asking what the hell his name is.
Tell me his name again.
Does that sound like someone who has a past with this villain? Hell no! They might do something unheard of. Not kill off a major villain from their mythos and actually give us another fight to build up towards. As if this were a comic or something, right? Regardless of what happens, I'm sure nothing too major will happen. If anything, a character or 2 might die, but with how many we have to watch going forward, I think I'm okay losing 1 or 2 if it means getting more films like Black Panther. Because honestly, Marvel has been killing it lately with their standalone films. The big meetup films just kind of seem like a distraction at this point. If it were up to me, I would just do what they did with Winter Soldier. Start bleeding in some of the characters into the other films, make one of them the title character, and go from there. They don't need to have these big meetup films as much now. The first Avengers, awesome. The second Avengers, eh. Third Avengers? I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Hopefully it'll all be worth it in the end. Hey everyone, hope you enjoyed that. I seriously am a really big fan of the MCU. I have most of the films on DVD or Blu-ray, and I am excited for what's coming next. I'm just ready for something different, something new. And I think that Infinity War just looks like it's going to be more of the same, and hopefully I'll be proven wrong. Let me know what you guys think about the new trailers in the comments below. Let's get a good discussion going about that. But until then, I will see you all in the next video, and thank you for watching.